The last fusion of the year, YUKIMASA Demon of Ice, pretty interesting champion, at least on the first looks, has just arrived to raid. Today starts Monday 15th of December, and we are on the test server to have a look at his kit and how he's able to perform, so you can decide if you want to go for him or not. Let's have a look at it. Hi, Senda here and welcome to another raid video. In this case, we're on the test server, we have the champion, they just gave it to us a couple of days ago, and I have him geared. I have certain ideas on how can he behave. So let's jump right in, let's see what is he able to do, how to gear him, types of masteries, etc, etc. So, YUKIMASA Demon of Ice. It's on the Shadow King. You can see it's not my best faction, and this is probably one of the reasons I'm gonna go for him, because I don't have many more options, and I think he's gonna be pretty interesting and pretty good, especially to clear hard faction. Let's try, let's have a look at him. First the skills, and then we'll go on the gear, then we'll go on the masteries and so on. So this is the guy in terms of stats, as pretty average, regular, normal stats for a attack-based damage dealer. He's a damage dealer, but he's also able to do a lot of different things, and that makes him, if you want him to shine in one part, he's not going to be great on the other part. So I'm going to tell you exactly the 2 or 3 different ways we can gear him, because we can do different things with him. He's, like I said, essentially a damage dealer. His role is dealing damage, but on top of that he's also able to control, because we have a block active skills on A1. I'm gonna go very quickly over the skills. So on the A1, attacks all enemies, block active skills. The downside of this is that it's only 25%, with books goes up to 15% extra, so 40%, and with the mastery goes to 45%. Also, this cannot be resisted if there's at least one enemy under any of these debuffs. He's able to apply freeze, but the thing is we cannot always rely on him having to apply the freeze in order for the rest of his skills to be irresistible. So this is a bit tricky, and I would advise you gear him with a bit of accuracy, because you never know. And the cool part of this A1 is that every time he loses a turn, because he's under one of these debuffs, under any of these control debuffs, he's automatically gonna do A1 and do A1 to the enemies, and that's it. So it's kind of a free attack. Then we go on the A2, attacks all enemies, again another AoE hit, pretty interesting. Will ignore block damage, it's always nice to have, and has a 75% chance of placing the freeze. With books, this goes to 100%, and again, exactly the same as on the A1, if an enemy is under any of these control debuffs, this cannot be resisted. And exactly like before, I would advise you gear him with some accuracy, because you cannot always rely that you're going to place any of these, or that you're going to have any of these. And this is probably the most interesting part of the kit, and the reason of why many of us are going to go for him is that he's able to revive at least one random ally if this skill does not kill an enemy. And if this skill kills an enemy, then we're able to revive all dead allies, which is pretty cool, and like I said, is very valuable for this faction, because the only other reviver that we have right now, it was Kinagashi. And Kinagashi is not great. I was gonna say a bit tankier, but not really. She's pretty much as weak as him in terms of stats, and if we rely on a champion able to revive, and in this case she only is able to revive one dead ally, he's by far, for the champions, or with the champions that we have right now, the best reviver we have. At least we can rely on always, if we don't kill an enemy and we build this guy like a tank, if we don't kill an enemy, we're always going to be reviving at least one. So this is another version of gearing him. One is full damage, the other one is full tank, and trying to tank as much as we can with this 914 defense, which is not too much. The A3 is also another signature move. This is going to be the hard hitter, and this is going to shine a lot if we geared him as a damage dealer. Basically, it does 2 or 3 things. Attacks one enemy, before attacking steals all the turn meter. For this we need accuracy, or there needs to be an enemy under any of these control debuffs, and also equalizes the target's defense with this champion's defense for this attack. And this is great because he has very low defense, so if we manage to lower the enemy's defense and then we smack him, that hit is going to be pretty high. Also, the higher the damage inflicted by this skill increases by the amount of turn meter stolen, which means we want to aim to attack enemies with a high turn meter. Passively does 2 things. every time we lose a turn because we're under any of these control debuffs, we get a 50% turn meter, so we're ready to go. And also every time we skip a turn because of one of these, the next attack will ignore 50% of the target's defense. So does a lot of things. Does control, does damage, does revive, is able to kind of some sort of counter to when he loses a turn, he's able to get turn meter. He's also able to proc A1, so has an interesting kit. It's a pretty solid fusion just because he's able to do a lot of different things. Now, how do I have him geared? And is this the best way to gear in? It depends. Basically depends on what other champions you have. In my case, this version you're seeing here is purely damage dealer, it's damage focused. Is it the best option? Probably not, but we're gonna see first the kind of damage he's able to do, and you're also gonna see why probably not is the best option, because in this case, since we're focusing so much in raw damage, the more offensive stats we put on him, the weaker he is. The less HP he's gonna have, the less defense he's gonna have, and the easier he's gonna die. And if our reviver is the first champion dying, it's not a very good reviver. So it depends a bit of what kind of role you want him to do. In this case, like I said, is full damage dealer. Because I'm using Merciless, like you could go for 9-piece Merciless if you want maximum damage. I didn't have the pieces, the jewelry and the ring and the banner for this set, but this is a pretty solid Merciless set that I had on another champion, I just put it on him. Also, the banner is not accuracy. I could also go with something like this one gives me accuracy and defense, so we could be getting extra accuracy here, a little bit more of defense, but like I said, he has a very low base defense, so he's not going to be the tankiest champion. And in terms of the rest of the things, like, you know, full attack, 100% crit rate, as much crit damage as you can, and then accuracy. Accuracy is quite important, and it depends a lot the gear you have on the champions, and especially who are you going to pair him with. If you can make sure that every single time there's an enemy affected by any of these stun, petrification, shield, sleep, freeze, any of this stuff, then you don't need accuracy. The problem is that you cannot always warranty that there's going to be an enemy under any of these debuffs. So if, just in case, I put him with around 300 accuracy. In terms of masteries, I went after this branch because it gives me some extra accuracy that, like I said, is quite important. It's very similar if we compare him with Michelangelo. The thing is with Michelangelo is the same exact kind of champion. It's a damage dealer, able to apply debuffs. He has way higher stats because he's also 5 stars. My YUKIMASA is not 5 stars, but it's the same kind of role. Also in his kit, he's able to ignore 25% of the target's resistance, which means he doesn't need that much accuracy. So the more accuracy we put on him, obviously the easier it's going to be freezing and the less dependable he's going to be on any other champion applying the debuffs he needs. And like I said, this is probably not the best way to gear him if you want him to be a solid reviver. Because like I said, if we're gonna be facing some very hard content, like hard faction wars, and he dies, we lose the reviver, we lose and we wipe the try. So it's probably a good idea to do something a bit more hybrid, a bit like, let's see if I have someone like I'm trying to describe. I think Raphael is on those lines, something like that. Like with a set, just like there's a set of stone skin, it can be one turn, like 4 pieces, 6 pieces, 9 pieces. And here you can also choose, do you want him to be more tanky, you want him more defense, you want more resistance, you want more HP. That is going to come at a cost. The cost is that he's going to be able to deal less damage, less attack, less crit rate, less crit damage, because we cannot have it all. We cannot have 100k of HP, 9k attack, 9k defense, 300 speed, 100% crit rate, shitloads of crit damage, 500 resistance, 1000 accuracy. We cannot have it all. So we have to choose what kind of branch we want to go. We want to go more damage dealer, or we want to go more kind of tanky and reviver. Because like you're going to see, he's going to be dying, and he's going to be dying a lot. And like I said, a reviver that dies is not the best option. In terms of relics, or in terms of other sets, I'm going to show you, I don't know if you know this website, or if you do know this website, it's my website, okay? It's mainly done in Spanish. There's some things that are not fully translated. You can come here and change the language, and you can choose whichever language. Very easy. And like I said, the translations are not going to be the best because it's all coded in Spanish. But basically here you can see instead of C team, it should be C gear. And you can see other different gears. For some reason this is not translated, but you can see here basically the icon of the different sets we can use on him. Mercurial, Merciless, Lethal, Savage, and Cruel are also good options if we're looking for damage. Mercurial being particularly interesting because it's going to allow us to at least receive 3 hits and not die from them. Same with the relics. The relics are labeled from the mythical on top, legendaries, epics, and rares. Obviously the ones at the top are the best. Again, they're not translated, but we all know that this icon, and you know if you see this icon, if you have the relic or not. But basically, all of these are gonna have something good for Yukimasa. For example, if we're able to freeze a lot, then the melted, I think it's called melted bell or something like that, is gonna be very good for him. If we're able to apply a lot of debuffs, again, Iris Coronet is gonna be very interesting for him. Or the Perch Shadow, also pretty interesting. Or the Cat's Gaze. I mean, there is a lot of good relics that can go on him. And in terms of blessings, either of the two. The first one is more damage focused, like we need the 6 stars, or Nature's Wrath, because we're going to be able to apply several debuffs. The more debuffs we place, the higher the damage, and so on. So here you can see a bit, you know, the skills of the guy. You have a guide handwritten by me. This is the version you're seeing, I don't think I've changed it much, but this is one of the versions, and you can find here literally every single champion, the latest guides, that you have already guides of all of these new champions that just came to the game. So like I said, here's another resource. You can see different other guys, you can see tier lists, you can see a lot of things. There's so many websites nowadays. Mine is the very first website for Raid Shadow Legends, way before any other website. Mine, not this one, but it had another website under the same domain that was the very first original Raid Shadow Legends champion guide thing, promo codes and so on. You have it there all complete. Written, like I said, only by myself with my own hand. Now, going back to the champion, like we said, we've seen relics, we've seen gear, we've seen masteries, we've seen blessing, we've seen masteries, yeah. Then let's do a quick damage test so we can more or less see what kind of multipliers. I always do it in the same place. I always use very same 3 champions as usual. I think this is the most realistic scenario because we're going to be able to see, I mean, you don't need to put like Gerbtug, you don't need to put Badelkazar, like these are not realistic scenarios. These are not champions you use every single time, and it's of little use seeing the maximum damage. No one is going to do that realistically. Here we want to see 2 things. 1, what are the multipliers, and 2, what are the chances of applying our own debuffs. Let's start with the A1, for example, which is a skill that we're going to use quite often, and we have a 45% chance because I have the mastery. 120, 165, I mean the damage is not bad, but it's not top level damage. It's okay. I mean, I would say the multiplier might be something like 2 point something, 2.3, 1.8, something around those lines. It's not crazy, and in this case we applied 3 out of 5 block active skill. Not the best, but also, like I said, we cannot constantly rely that we're going to be applying it because it's only a 45%. It's going to be very useful to have it, but we cannot always consider that we're going to have it. Now, let's go on to another more interesting skill. Let's go on the A3. The A3, what we're gonna do is we're gonna even out our defenses, steal the turn meter. In this case, there's 1 enemy under fear, which means this is not gonna be able to be resisted, cannot be resisted because there's 1 enemy under fear. And we're gonna smack, and the more turn meter we steal, the harder we're gonna hit. So let's hit this one on the left that has quite a high turn meter and see what is this damage. 563. I mean, this skill is probably the hardest hitter on his kit. It's not crazy, it's not like 1.5 million damage, nothing crazy like that, but it's a solid hit, able to take down most of the enemy. Now, the problem is that this is not super useful against bosses because unless you can stun these minions or something like that, I mean, and it doesn't even matter really because you cannot really steal turn meter from a boss. Some bosses, yes, you can, but most of the bosses you can't. Same with any of these debuffs, same with the freeze. Most bosses, you cannot freeze them. Same with the A1, you cannot put block active skills on most bosses. So probably not the best champion against bosses. Let's see the A2, the multipliers of this one. AoE hit 320 to 230, so around the 250,000, something like that. Probably the 320 was the mastery proccing, the Helm Smasher mastery proccing. Other than that, his damage is okay. It's not bad, it's not super crazy. Let's try the A3 again, now against an enemy with less turn meter, for example this guy. You can see at least half the damage, pretty much almost half the turn meter. So the more turn meter, I think you can see a pattern that he hits really hard. Let's try the A1 again, probably about the same, 102, 90,000, so slightly even less, but we were able to block 3 out of 5 and 1 died. So in terms of damage, his damage is not crazy, but he brings a lot of usability to the team. He brings freezes, he brings control, he brings damage, 628, this is more solid, it's, like I said, pretty much a bit more than double of what he did before, and the A2, his damage is okay, considering the enemies have decreased defense and weaken. Against the boss, let's see, because the boss, we're not going to be able to steal any turn meter, and his damage is nothing crazy. I mean, 100k on A1, let's see the A3, it is the A3, 336,000, so I think this was the A3. I'm not sure if we're able to take down the defense of bosses, I don't know if that works again. 274 on A2, I mean the damage is okay. It's not the best champion for Dragon, like I said, it's not the best champion for dungeons in general, at least for bosses. For waves, he's pretty solid, he brings a lot of usability and a lot of utility, but I'm concerned about his survivability. And that we can see it, for example, I think he's a champion that's going to be very good in Faction Wars, obviously depending on what other champions you have to pair him with. But for example, I think there was a stage, let's see if it's this stage here, defeat 10 champions with while your champions under Veil or Perfect Veil. Okay, who do I have that can put Veil on my champion? I don't think I have literally anyone. You can see all my Shadow King here is not great. It's not a good faction. And Faction War Hard, I think, is one of the worst contents for me, just because it's stupidly difficult. Like this one, for example. Beat the stage with all champions alive at all times. Here, if you don't have a reviver, you're gonna have tough time. If you don't want to be changing the gear in all the champions constantly and put literally every single champion under some stun set or provoke set or something like that, having a reviver is going to be very useful. And in this case, he's able to do it. But, and we're going to see, Faction Wars is a bit too overtuned. The enemies are too hard, and you're going to see because they just hit you by stupid amounts of damage, and they're going to almost one-shot you're supposed to be reviver. That's why I meant, like, it's a good option to have him also in some sort of defensive kit. Let's target, for example, this Arik. There's 3 enemies under stun. There's no point me trying to freeze them because they're already controlled. So let's go with the A3 and do as much damage as we can, and in this case the turn meter steal is going to be irresistible because there's at least 4 champions under stun. So we do the A3, 249, I mean, it's a solid amount of damage, able enough to take down 1 enemy. Now there's an enemy here under stun, so the A2 is going to be irresistible, and the A2 is going to be able to freeze, and here you go, we froze the enemies. So it's good, and you can do a very good use of him if you are constantly controlling all the enemies. As soon as the enemies, and we're going to see it now, start taking turns and start doing different things, we are not going to have much fun because he's gonna die very quickly because he's very squishy. Let's control this wave again. Now let's get rid of this guy, for example. Steel turn meter, weak hit, amazing. Let's freeze them because I don't want this Crixia trying to do any sort of attack on me. There's 1 frozen on the left, so this is pretty much the way I think he works. Constant control, and if something happens and any enemy kind of escapes, let's see if we can try to survive this wave, but basically we cannot let anyone take a turn. We could also try, now we're already in problems because we're already under control. Let's leave this one. For example, A1 now. Are we able to place block active skills? 1 out of 5, which is not great. We should probably get rid of Lilith. But I think we're already a bit too much in trouble because they're gonna start attacking us. We are able, I think, to ignore block damage, which is great, but see, YUKIMASA is the only one who took the hardest hit. The only critical went for him, and now they start getting buffs. and then we attack, and then we're gonna be counterattacked, and then Yukimasa almost dies, now dies. And this is the problem, this is my main concern, that he is extremely weak. He's a damage dealer. Damage dealers normally don't have any good defense, not even base stats, defensive base stats. So even if we put something like Stone Skin, like Mercurial, any of these things, his defense and his HP is not too high. And like I said, if the reviver is so weak that dies constantly, he's not a very good reviver. And that's my main concern with him. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get much use of him in Faction Wars, basically because Faction Wars is way too overtuned, it's way too difficult, and they just hit us by way too much, or at least he's just not the champion for the job. I mean, a reviver should be something like Lil 2, tanky as hell, with a lot of HP, with a lot of defense, with very good defensive buffs. But in this case, Yukimasa now, I mean, I'm not going to be able to finish this. Maybe the stage I will be able to finish it, but never going to get the 3 stars. Basically because I don't have any other way to revive, and the faction doesn't have anyone stronger or tankier in order to revive. That's why I was saying that maybe this is not the best build. It's great for damage, but it's extremely weak, and there's literally no other way to keep him alive, and if he dies, he's not a very good reviver. So that's a bit my take on him. I mean, he's not a specialist in any other boss, he's gonna be doing pretty good in pretty much any wave and that kind of content, but we need to keep in mind that he's extremely weak. If he's your only reviver, it's not going to be great. I think it's great as a kind of support reviver if you have someone tankier, so he can help the reviver while the revive from the tankier champion is on cooldown or something like that, but it's not the best only single option as a faction reviver just because he's too weak. I don't know. Let me know what you think about this guy, if you're gonna go for him or not, if I should have tried him in a different gear. Whatever you're thinking, just leave it down in the comments. Thanks a lot for watching the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.